Thank you, Deepak. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the program. This is Grants and Growth panel. We have an exceptional panel for you today. Again, just to quickly introduce myself, my name is Oleg Asambaev. I'm the moderator for this panel. I currently serve at the USPTO Office of International Patent Cooperation, International Patent Legal Administration. Since about 2014, I worked with the representatives of the USPTO and the SBA to develop policy and educational initiatives in an effort to help commercialize new products and services developed through federal R&D funding. Science and technology have historically flourished in the United States because of a robust innovation ecosystem. This ecosystem must be nurtured and refreshed to succeed in a rapidly changing world. Providing access to the innovation ecosystem for every American across racial, gender, economic, and geographic lines enhances our national security, maintains our global leadership, promotes technological development, and captures the full breadth of diversity of thought. The topic of this panel is extremely timely, refreshing and reinvigorating our national science and technology strategy and expanding access to federal R&D funding for historically underserved communities is a priority of the administration. The goal of this panel is to bring to light the complexities of the federal R&D funding. Our panelists of experts will provide insights into opportunities and barriers that exist at their respective agencies on how to obtain non-dilutive funding for your business from the federal government. So with this, let's meet our panel, and let's start with Joanne.
Thank you, Oleg. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I'm Joanne Hill. I serve as Chief of the Office of Business Development for the Minority Business Development Agency at the U.S. Department of Commerce.
Thank you, Joanne. Appreciate it. Next is Barry.
Good afternoon. My name is Barry Johnson, and I'm Director of the Division of Translational Impacts at the National Science Foundation. That division is part of our new directorate at NSF called the Directorate for Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships. And the division that I'm responsible for is home to the SBIR STTR program, Partnerships for Innovation, the I-Corps program as our three main programs that we manage on behalf of the foundation. So I'm excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to talking to you all.
Thank you, Barry. That was very interesting. Now let's turn to Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Sasiela. I'm the Innovator Support Team Lead and Senior Regulatory Specialist in this Small Business Education and Entrepreneurial Development Office at the National Institutes of Health. We coordinate the small business program for all of NIH, and I've been supporting small businesses through NIH for going on a decade now, helping hundreds of life science companies understand how to apply to the program and navigate the regulatory and business landscape as they develop their solutions.
Thank you, Chris. That was great. Thank you. And now, last but not least, Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Shih. I'm the Director of Ecosystem Development at the U.S. Small Business Administration in the Office of Investment and Innovation. And so SBA, Small Business Administration, hopefully you know about us, but we're the only cabinet level federal agency that's fully dedicated to small businesses and provide counseling, capital, and contracting expertise and serve as the nation's go-to resource and voice for small businesses. I sit within the Office of Investment and Innovation, and we specifically focus on high growth small businesses from idea to IPO and through access to capital that's through public-private partnerships. So the major programs we work on are America's Seed Fund, the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer, or SBIR, STTR programs that I'm sure we're going to talk a lot more about, as well as America's Growth Fund, the Small Business Investment Companies, or SBIC, which really leverages the full faith and credit of the U.S. government to increase the pool of investment capital that's available to small businesses. So looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Jennifer. That was very informative. Thank you. Thank you, panelists, for the introductions. So I guess we could jump into the Q&A. So I guess the way it'll work, I'll just ask the questions and kind of go around the room, and I'll I guess I'll call on you, and that's how you know it's your time to talk. All right, so our first question is, what are the main objectives of your program? Jennifer, why don't you lead us off?
Sure. And, I think I think SBA is really well known for a lot of the variety of programs that we cover. And really, it's all about, again, focused on supporting small businesses. So as it relates to the programs that I'll focus in on here, I think I'll talk mostly maybe about the SBIR and STTR programs, America's Seed Fund, because then I can give that high level overview of how are we involved, and then it can kind of toss it over to Chris and Barry from NIH and NSF, because what most people might know about SBIR and STTR is that this is almost or over $4 billion each year that goes in non-dilutive funding through grants or contracts to small businesses to do research and development. So this is really, perfectly suited to the invention community here. And there are a number of different goals for America's Seed Fund, but it's really, one of the key things is how do we support that early stage to be able to translate those inventions and ideas and support the research and development that's going to need to take that into either the commercial marketplace or the federal government contracting marketplace. And the key things there are we need to source from all across the entire country. As you said, I'm really glad that you started with that statement, Oleg. But and also I would feel free, or Chris and Barry, feel free to jump in anytime I'm talking about SBIR and the American Seed Fund here. But the way that SBA is involved is through more policy and coordination and empowering the agencies that fund the programs. So this is really a partnership, and SBA does not actually have the money that goes directly to the companies. That's all through each of the individual 11 participating federal departments, really, that participate and fund companies. That might be a good place to just pause and have either Chris or Barry kind of talk a little bit.
I'm willing to jump in.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. That was incredible. Yeah, Chris, why don't you go ahead? Yes.
Sure. So the NIH is actually the second largest agency within the federal government, DoD being the largest for the small business program. And our fund is a little bit over $1.2 billion a year for the past several years. And the primary goal of the NIH Small Business Program is to take all that basic science discovery into life science that we fund through other mechanisms and move it towards the positive impact on human health. And at NIH, most people think about a government agency as being an agency. At NIH, I describe us as 24 unique business units, each of which has its own mission and vision and its own way of using this pot of money to really forward progress in its field. And so at NIH, if there were one thing and only one thing I could leave you with today, it would be if you're interested in the NIH Small Business Program, you should talk to the appropriate program officer. That's the most important thing at NIH, is talk to a program officer about your idea and your research plan and get their feedback. It will make it a stronger application at the time that you do submit. Because you may think, oh, I'm developing technology that has something to do with lungs, so I'll go to the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute. But if it is a communicable disease that is targeting lungs, it may actually go to the National Institute on Allergy and Infectious Diseases instead. So it really helps you understand where you're going to live and where your science and scientific guidance from the government is going to come, as well as, of course, the money. And there are some institutes at NIH that will the NIH has an external peer review system. And so as the peer review scores come in, there are some institutes that will pay by score, but there are others that pay very much by mission. And it's important as an applicant for you to understand which institute you're working with, which business unit you're working with, and how they operate so that you can be as successful as possible coming into the program.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. Thank you, Chris. Barry?
Sure, thank you. Most people know of the National Science Foundation as a supporter of basic research, predominantly at universities. We provide more than 40% of the basic research funding that universities have throughout the country in engineering. In computer science, that number is above 75%. And across all of the science and engineering disciplines, we are heavy supporters of basic research that's conducted at the universities. And so the programs in my division are really focused on how do we get that basic research out of the lab and into the market? And we have three primary programs, SBIR and STTR. Obviously, I'll say a little bit more about that, but I want to first talk about our Partnerships for Innovation program. This is a translational research program where we fund universities to actually go from roughly where they stop with basic research to move this forward towards commercialization. So they can do a proof of concept demonstration, an experiment, develop a prototype, any of a number of things. But this is funding that goes to universities to support that first step in translational activity. The I-Corps program is really an entrepreneurial training program. If you look across startups coming out of universities and examine those that fail, one of the reasons, in fact, about half of those companies fail because they create a product nobody wants. There's no market for it. It's not aligned with a need that's in the commercial marketplace. And so I-Corps is really focused on helping mostly faculty and students in universities develop a product definition and a value proposition that's aligned with the market, and then helping them understand how they go from the lab to the market. And so it's an entrepreneurial training program, and we've been fortunate to collaborate with NIH and collaborate with DoD and NASA and others on this I-Corps program. It's really a federal government-wide program that we're responsible for. And then finally, the SBIR and STTR program. And our, as Jennifer and Chris have alluded to, I mean, our program really is focused on, startups. We want to be the first money that your company gets. And we want to help fund you to actually mitigate the technology risk that you have by doing additional applied research so that you can move yourself to a point where the traditional private investment community would have interest in it. And so it's really very early stage, very high risk, very, long term in most cases, getting that out of fundamental research and into commercialization. And we're really proud of the program. We've been at it for 40 years. And so it's a program that we've spent a lot of time and energy and effort on. And it's part of this new directorate for technology, innovation, and partnerships at NSF. And we always like to brag on some of the things we've done. We funded Qualcomm, for example, when they were a startup company. And so there have been some really tremendous successes coming out of this program. And we at NSF are big believers in it. And we believe that it's just mandatory for us to really help get things out of the lab and into the marketplace.
And I just wanted to kind of tie off the conversation about SBIR and STTR and America's Seed Fund with, obviously this is InventionCon. And so intellectual property is something that's very important to the people who are attending here. And so I want to say, SBIR and STTR, this is not taking ownership of your intellectual property. And the funding is not taking any equity from your company. So really, this is an amazing, I would say, opportunity to really de-risk the research end of getting, an idea and helping turn that more into a business. And then, of course, there's so many other programs within the SBA and MBDA. And so maybe that's where I'll make sure that Joy gets a chance to talk about it, but that really support the business side. So I'll go with that.
Thanks, Jennifer. And I'll chime in. This is an excellent segue to what I would like to share regarding MBDA. For those of you who are not as familiar with the agency, we are the only agency that is specifically designed to foster the growth and global competitiveness of minority business enterprises. A nugget that I would be remiss not to share is we are very proud that we are now a permanent agency within the U.S. Department of Commerce. Yay, right? And we have now received nomination confirmation of our first undersecretary that is expected to start next week. But I love the foundation that's been laid here because we have been hard at work. We have a portfolio of about 10 different programmatic investments. One of those is our flagship Business Center program, but the newest that I'd like to share and talk about today are those that really triangulate and fit into this conversation. And those are minority-serving colleges and universities and minority-serving institutions. We just closed a grant competition where we're about to fund 7 new MSIs that will be a part of our portfolio in addition to the 5 that we already fund. We have a couple of partnerships and all of what they're doing is promoting growth and innovation from startup entrepreneurs. The other 2 that I would like to talk about are Georgia Tech and Rice University. Both of those are working on a project that's called the Inner City Innovation Hub. They have some remarkable research and innovation projects that are taking place that are pulling in all things related to the intellectual property platform and making certain that the intellectual property rights of the companies that are a part of these programs are protected, and also deeply involved in research and development, both of those universities and projects that they're working on. The other thing that's on the horizon, the other initiative, if you will, that is baking is as a part of this act that passed MBDA into codification is what's called the Parent J. Mitchell Entrepreneurship Education Program. That education program is going to be with colleges and universities across the nation that is centered on essentially helping these colleges to breed new entrepreneurs, to help with taking projects, concepts from the labs to market. And that is an excellent effort where I see us continuing to build and collectively forge, get the word out on the opportunities that are available to help them with strengthening their resources, if you will, to really breed and help us as a nation to continue to be competitive, because that's where the competition really lies, is in the R&D and innovation that's bred, through these colleges and universities oftentimes. And so I did want to share that MBDA is, we are stirring the pot, if you will. We know all about, we work very closely, several of our partners with NSF, and with regard to SBA, we have one of our newest partners, and I'm sure you know all about them. The Philadelphia MBDA Business Center is our first one that is now an SBIC. She's now a state for the state of Pennsylvania. And so we have our first SBIC who is definitely engaged and involved with SBIR, STTR efforts and initiatives, all things that we're doing under the transportation and infrastructure umbrella that ties in nuggets of what we're discussing here today. But programmatically, as an organization, we're here to help breed those entrepreneurs that are startups. The last nugget that I will share is that we will also be launching in the near future, in partnership with the U.S. Department of Treasury, our state small business credit initiative. Those centers will be focused on targeting companies that are seeking venture capital for what? New innovation, concepts and ideas that we can help incubate and accelerate through this programmatic effort. So with that, I just wanted to put that out there as we continue to talk and share of resources that are going to be available.
Great. Thank you, Jan. Thank you so much for that. So now let's say I'm a inventor, entrepreneur, and I'm considering, I need some funding, right? I need to get my ideas to market, and I don't know if you guys can help me. So is that something? Maybe let's talk about what types of businesses or individuals or who can apply. Do they have to be U.S. based? Do they have to be U.S. citizens, U.S. nationals? Let's talk a little bit about that. So who can qualify for this? And so, Joanne, maybe you could lead us off.
Yes, I'm sure. So for the clients that we serve at MBDA, they do have to be U.S. based companies. Selfishly, we want to invest in, America's companies because, again, we want to maintain our global edge, if you will, pushing and promoting U.S. based, made in America export products that we fund for U.S. based companies.
The same is true for NIH. I mean, we're using taxpayer dollars to fund the small business program as well as all the other research at NIH. And it's of prime importance to us to ensure that that is of benefit to the United States at large. And we, of course, also hope it will spread worldwide.
Barry?
Yes, well, very similar to those before me. We are funding companies that are based in the U.S. and the principal investigator, the individuals working for those companies must be qualified to work in the U.S. They don't have to be U.S. citizens, but they have to have the legal right to work within the U.S. And so, that's obviously very important, as has been said, because of the use of taxpayer dollars to fund these companies.
And I think more broadly, the SBIR and STTR programs, in terms of eligibility, the ownership does have to be either U.S. citizens, majority U.S. citizens, or permanent resident aliens. So, it's something that is slightly different than some of the other SBA programs where you do have to be a U.S. citizen. But one of the things I think that might, just going back to your original question about, whether you're an independent inventor, let's say, who doesn't have a business yet. So eligibility wise, right, the funding for SBIR and STTR does go to an organization. But then I want to go back to what Joanne was describing in terms of the flagship business center program. SBA also has a number of these resource partners. And I would say that's also like a key place where we provide value for the agencies that fund small businesses through SBIR and STTR, as well as just more broadly, how we can help independent inventors or entrepreneurs who may not yet have started a business. SBA does fund a number of resource partners all across the country, the Small Business Development Centers, SBDCs, or SCORE Business Mentors, Women's Business Centers, Veterans Business Outreach Centers, Community Navigators. So SBA really supports a whole ecosystem and network of organizations all across the country that collaborate with the MBDA business centers as well. I think some are dual homed, some are located at universities. And so then there are going to be these other, NIH or NSF funded organizations that are also at the same university where independent inventors or potential entrepreneurs can also get support and access to understand should they actually create a business? Or would it make more sense maybe to license their IP to an existing business? But the counseling, and I think these entrepreneur support organizations, the innovator support organizations, that is really a key resource to also determine, what the navigating the grants. And I think I'm just going to call back to the panel that happened right before us. Actually, there were a number of resource partners there. So Hello Alice was funded by the SBA to support small businesses. Kedma O is, she actually, I think, worked at a small business development center and women's business center. And so those are the types of counselors you can rely on to help support you in figuring out this journey. So that's kind of a big message that I want to send there too.
Right. And I just wanted to add that. Oh, go ahead, Joanne. Yes.
I was just going to say there are also a number of programs at NIH that do not require a business to be formed in order for a life science innovator to explore whether or not there is a commercial potential for their creative thought. And particularly, there's a trans NIH initiative called the Research Evaluation and Commercialization Hubs. And these are consortia of universities that will provide seed funding and, more to the point, project management and subject matter expertise guidance to innovators. But then there are also a number of other projects, such as the Proof of Concept, POCTERN, what does this stand for? Translational Research Network. I'll make it up as I go.
That sounds right.
Which is an engineering initiative that is sponsored by the National Institute of Bioimaging and Bioengineering. There is the CTSA network that is supported through the National Center for Translational Sciences. I missed a word in there. Accelerating Translational Sciences. But the CTSA program in particular is a great way to explore additional uses for current therapeutic products, or drug repurposing, and things of that nature. So there are a lot of additional resources that are not necessarily small business funded programs that are available through NIH. And again, I'm going to say it, talk to your program officer. If you've got a great idea, they may have a way for you to get support for that is faster than applying for and receiving small business funding from NIH.
Great. Thank you, panel. That was a very interesting discussion. Moving on to, as I'm going through this journey here of receiving funding, how can I apply, right? Where can I apply? Do you guys offer help to apply into your programs? And where can I go to find the application? Barry, why don't you lead us off here?
Sure. Well, we have we have a very good website. Seed Fund at NSF essentially is. But if you search on Seed Fund at NSF, you'll find the link to that website. It tells you the topic areas that that we're broadly interested in. But it also gives you the names and contact information for the program directors. So to follow up and just to emphasize Chris's point, that the program directors are the best way to connect to our program. You can find out more information. They can help guide you through the process. We also, in our NSF, we have a process that we hope is simplified for those that are interested. The process starts with what we call a project pitch. This is a 3-page form that you submit via the web, via a website. It describes your innovation. It talks about the team that you have, the market potential, what you need to do and what you need the money for. It's a 3-pager. So a very simple way to get started, and then program directors review that to determine if it aligns with the objective of our program. And, for example, I'll give you a good example of something that wouldn't align. If you have an idea and all you need is money to write some software to implement that idea, there's no technical challenge, there's no research, it's just a development effort. That's not a good fit for our program. What we're interested in funding is really so-called deep technology companies that have a really innovative technical idea, and they need to do some applied research in order to mitigate the risk associated with that idea. That's our interest. But you can learn that through this 3-pager, and you get feedback within a couple of weeks. And you are either invited to submit a full proposal or not invited to submit a full proposal. And then we have a process, obviously, if you are invited, to go through to submit and have that proposal reviewed and have a decision made on funding of that. So that project pitch is a great way to get started. It's a great way to get some quick feedback and to know whether your idea is a good match for our program or not. The other thing that we do, and I know others do as well, is our program directors frequently do outreach events. We do webinars, so that you can learn about our program and meet a program director. We have events that are at various geographic locations around the country, virtual these days, but previously in person, and maybe increasingly coming in person a little bit more. But we've got these outreach events where you can learn about our program and learn the steps to apply for our program. The last thing I want to say is concerning our I-Corps program, because I-Corps is really designed to help you identify whether you have something that's worth starting a company over. We want to get you in the I-Corps program before you've started a company, because the real goal of I-Corps is to help you identify if you have an idea worthy of a startup or not. And so we call that a go, no-go decision. About 60% of the teams that go through the I-Corps program reach a no-go decision. They may have a great idea, but they're not quite at the point where they can start a company, or they don't have a good product definition. They don't have good alignment with the marketplace just yet. So in our world, we would love to see, entrepreneurs go through I-Corps really as a starting point. And you can engage with I-Corps through the I-Corps hubs that we've funded around the country. We had 5 that were funded last year. We previously called those nodes and sites, and we had a bunch of them around the country, but now they're called hubs. 5 that were funded last year. We have an ongoing competition that'll be announced sometime in the future who the new recipients are going to be. But those are each hub is 8 universities that are serving a geographic region of the country and helping regionally entrepreneurs go through the I-Corps program, but also supporting our so-called national program as well. So there are lots of different ways to engage, and we're working hard to make it as simple as we possibly can, because we know entrepreneurs, don't necessarily have the resources of large organizations behind them. And so we're really trying to focus on that individual that has an idea that they want to bring to the table.
Great. Thank you, Barry. Joanne, do you want to let us know?
Sure. So at our, you've heard me say our flagship business center network, we have 41 of those now located throughout the nation. One of their primary objectives is to provide and facilitate access to capital for small minority-owned businesses, as well as medium to larger firms. And they do that through both traditional and alternative sources of capital. We have a number of partners throughout the ecosystem under the financing umbrella that we've been building and cultivating for many years that are there to help some of those companies. If they don't necessarily fit the bill, if you will, for what Barry was just sharing with regard to go or no go, right? You might want to go, but you might need a little microfinancing to help you to get started. And coupled with that, you might need a little technical assistance. You might need some management and technical assistance. And so the beauty of our Business Center program is they facilitate that, and they provide that service in partnership with partners like the SBA and other partners that we have. But we fund companies to give you a range, if you will. They might be looking for $25,000 to $50,000, up to $25 to $50 million plus. And so we help a wide range of companies through the services that we offer through our national network of business centers. We have we have an equity multiplier program as well that I should mention. You heard me mention earlier about our SBIR. The operator for the SBIR program is the one who manages the Equity Multiplier Initiative. That is also designed to help companies that are seeking funding for innovative products and projects that they're looking to get on the go side, if you will, to move forward. And so you can learn more about those by visiting our website at mbda.gov and all other programmatic initiatives that we have.
Thank you, Joanne. Chris?
Absolutely. So I would be very remiss if I didn't start by saying go to seed.nih.gov for everything you could ever want to know about the NIH Small Business Program. I think I would probably be kicked out of the government if I didn't start there. But I'm saying that not just because it's my job to say it, but also because it's really true. We've recently launched this website and it has a ton of information. There's a very functional step-by-step guide about register your company in these different systems. Here's how to identify the right program officer to talk to. Here's the guide on how to fill out the forms that you're going to need to fill out. It's a very comprehensive website, and it has a direct link to all of the open funding opportunities that are targeting the small business community at NIH. So I know a number of agencies fund based on topic areas. Certainly that's true with DoD, which is mostly a contract basis. NSF also typically has topic areas that they're very interested in. At NIH, we want to fund and other. NIH really wants to fund the research that you're passionate about. We think that's going to, by and large, have you give the most to the project. So you're not following the money, you're following your passion. And we will fund everything from health apps that will help people identify behavioral patterns that they may want to modify, to prosthetics, new types of prosthetics, new research tools for drug discovery or for manufacturing aids, and of course, therapeutics and devices and biologics and vaccines and all of the traditional healthcare-based things. All of those applications come in through one or one of four solicitations, and those are for the SBIR program and the STTR program with and without clinical trials. Right, so there are four basic applications, and you just choose the one that is best for your company, and you can come in. In terms of hands-on resources for helping innovators write their applications, the NIH is a little bit limited. We do have multiple examples of successful applications that have been published online, and these are on the websites for the National Cancer Institute, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, and the National Institute on Aging. There may be more out there that I haven't mentioned. My apologies if I've missed a particular component of NIH. We also have an applicant assistance program, which is a program designed to help first-time applicants to NIH understand the process. And this has been going on for, I think, about 7 years now, 6 or 7 years. And we've heard great things from the companies that have applied and participated in that program. We also have a C3I program and commercialization program. C3I. Sorry, I am in the government. Sometimes it's just an acronym. And these are available both to small businesses that have already formed as well as to innovators prior to forming a company. So you can do that company evaluation. It's very similar to the I-Corps program that Barry described from NSF. We also, once you are in the small business program at NIH, have the opportunity for companies to go through that customer discovery work in the NIH I-Corps program. So there are resources based on whether you are a first-time applicant, a Phase 1 awardee, simply an academic researcher exploring an opportunity. And then, of course, all of the online content and the outreach that our program officers and our office do on a very regular basis. So hopefully you can find us seed.nih.gov.
Well, okay, obviously I have to put the plug in for SBIR.gov. So that's Small Business Innovation Research, SBIR.gov. Because, okay, so obviously even just hearing about 2 different agencies that fund this through the same program, American Seed Fund, there's so much to absorb and learn. And there are 11 different federal departments actually that fund small businesses through this program. And so, for example, the Department of Energy right now has a similar technical assistance kind of program called the Applicant Assistance Program, where they directly, and they have an open, if you're working in energy, right, you should go check out the DOE SBIR site. But they currently have topics that are open. They do have more specific topics they're looking for. But they also have this program that provides assistance to help new first-time applicants walk through the processes, because we know that the government is full of bureaucratic challenges and we don't want this to trip you up. And so, while we work on fixing those, reducing those bureaucratic challenges, we have these programs that will help you get through them. And we fund organizations like the MBDA centers, like the small business development centers. And so specifically around the innovation side, SBA funds organizations in currently 32 states and Puerto Rico. That explicitly have funding to support new innovators that might be interested in the SBIR and STTR programs. So the program is called FAST, the Federal and State Technology Partnerships Program. So the key thing to remember is SBIR.gov and look at the local assistance, because that's where, there will be people who that's their job, is to kind of figure out what the landscape looks like. And another really key piece of that is that the reason why we have individual organizations across the country in specific states is because there are many states that actually provide assistance as well. So there are what are called phase 0 kind of or grants that will help provide funding to an organization or company, and an innovator or small business that's interested in applying, to help get that, a little either resources, funding, or access to somebody who can help work through the system. There's also, at no cost, the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, PTACs. And so APTAC, that is a network of organizations, again, Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, PTAC, again, across the entire country, where they will help you get through, for example, the federal registration systems that you have to go through in order to accept funding from the federal government. And so, we're really, one of the things that SBA and our office is really focused on is helping make sure that those resources are there for the entrepreneur support organizations and that network out there so that they can help you. And it really is about how do we make sure that, we create sort of a friendlier front door for innovators. We know it can be intimidating, the number of letters that are just represented here. But that's so SBIR.gov and SBIR.gov/local assistance, or just, find that. If you're not in the research arena, let's say, maybe like what Barry was talking about, you have a great idea, you need funding to get you to be able to implement something, but it's not really research. SBA does have loan programs, micro loans, and then also, again, I would point to the SBA.gov local assistance and talking to the small business development centers or SCORE mentors around what are the different possibilities for accessing capital to help you get to what it is the next stage that you need to get to for your business or for the technology itself.
I just want to tag on to Jennifer's comment about SBIR.gov. If you go to SBIR.gov and click on About, you'll see participating agencies. And if you click on that, you'll see the logos of each of the federal agencies that participate in the program. And for example, if you click on the NSF logo, it'll take you to our website, seedfund.nsf.gov. So it is one-stop shopping. I think if you go to that SBIR.gov, you can get to the other resources that you need for the SBIR and STTR programs.
And I do want to also put a call out for, so Barry just mentioned, the SBIR program's been around for 40 years. We actually literally just celebrated the 40th anniversary of SBIR, the Small Business Innovation Research Program, on July 22nd. And so during that week, we actually had a number of introductory panels and agency presentations to help orient people who are new to the program. So all of that's on americasseedfund.us. But if you go to sbir.gov, there should be a link in the big, carousel there.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. That was amazing. So speaking of bureaucratic challenges, Jennifer, what regulations as an entrepreneur should I be aware of and just review and maybe study a little bit so that I know how to interact properly with your agency?
Yeah. So, well, I would say not to actually, I know this sounds wild. Don't study the regulations. But, I think it is really about talking to either agency personnel and representatives or to these organizations that we fund to make sure that we can reach every entrepreneur. We're a small agency and we can't help everybody individually, but we're trying to make sure that the resources exist out there. But I will say again, America's Seed Fund, some agencies issue the funding through grants. And so then, there are granting rules. But then there are agencies that fund small businesses through contracting vehicles. And so that does fall under the federal acquisition rules or the FAR. And so there are like blackout periods where you can't talk to but overall, SBIR.gov, go find what agency you might be interested in finding funding from.
Oh, thank you, panelists. I believe we're coming to the end of our panel, so I'd like to thank our exceptionist panelists for their expertise and such informative and insightful discussion. This will surely be of great help to our attendees in their effort to obtain R&D funding. Thank you all very, very much.